Hi and welcome back to my channel. I'm Kim and in today's video we're going to learn how to form and use the conditional mood in Finnish. This video is split into 6 chapters. First we're going to have a short introduction about what the conditional mood generally is. Then in chapter 2 we are going to focus on the formation of the conditional, followed by chapter 3 in which we are going to learn how to conjugate the conditional for all persons in both positive and negative forms. In chapter 4 then we will take a look at an important exception regarding the conditional mood, followed by chapter 5 where we are going to learn when and how to use the conditional in sentences. And finally in chapter 6 then we will practice what we've learned today by solving some exercises together. So let's get started. The conditional corresponds to the English code or word and describes actions that either depend on a condition or are hypothetical. A very common structure is the if sentence. For example, jos minulla olisi aikaa, matkustaisin New Yorkiin. Means if I had time, I would travel to New York. So here the condition of me traveling to New York is me having time. Then the conditional is also very important for politeness. Instead of saying minä haluan, which means I want in English, we can also say minä haluaisin, meaning I would like, which sounds way softer and more polite. So this is why we often use the conditional in restaurants, stores or hotels. And when we want to form the conditional, we follow this rule: strong verb stem plus easy plus personal ending. Now let's focus on the formation. Rule number 1, verb stems ending in a, o, u or y. An example of a verb with a stem that ends in a is haluta, which means to want. First, let's see how we get the verb stem of haluta. Step number 1. In order to form the verb stem, we have to form the third person plural present tense of haluta, which is he haluavat. Step number 2, remove the vat ending. So haluavat changes to halua. This is our verb stem. Now we can finally form the conditional. Again, also here we have 2 steps. Step number 1, add easy. So halua plus easy is haluaisi. Then step number 2, add the personal ending. So for example, for the first person singular, the so-called minä form, it would be haluaisi plus n, and we get haluaisin. This is the first person singular conditional mood, and it means I would want or I'd like. Nice, let's take another example, a verb with a stem that ends in o, for example, sanoa. Again, first we want to find the verb stem. So, step number 1, we have to form the third person plural present tense of sanoa, which is he sanovat. Step number 2, remove the vat ending. Sanovat changes to sano. Sano is our verb stem. Now we can form the conditional. Again, step number 1, add easy. So that means we have sano plus easy and we get sanoisi. Then step number 2, again we add the personal ending we need. For example, let's take the second person singular. So that would be sanoisi plus T is sanoisit. This is the conditional mood, second person singular of sanoa, and it means you would say. Alright? One more example, a verb with a stem that ends in u. For example, nukkua, which means to sleep. Again, how do we find the verb stem? Step number 1, from the third person plural present tense of nukkua, which is he nukkuvat. And then step number 2, remove the vat ending. So nukkuvat changes to nukku. Now it's time for the conditional mode. Step number 1, add easy. So that means we have nukku plus easy is nukkuisi. And step number 2 again, we add the personal ending we need. For example, for the first person plural, it would be nukkuisi plus me is nukkuisimme. Nukkuisimme, which means we would sleep. It's the first person plural conditional mood of the verb nukkua, right? Now let's move on to rule number 2, verb stems ending in e or I. For example, a verb with a stem that ends in e is lukea, which means to read. Let's find the verb stem. Step number 1, from the third person plural present tense of lukea, which is he lukevat. And then step number 2, again we have to remove the vat ending, so lukevat changes to luke. Now it's time for the conditional mood. Here we have 3 steps to follow. Step number 1 is remove e. So luke changes to look. Then step number 2, again we add easy. So that means we have look plus easy is lookisi. And then step number 3, we add the personal ending we need. So let's take for example the first person singular again. That means lookisi plus n is lookisin. This is the conditional mood, first person singular of the verb lukea. In English it means I would read. Alright, let's take a verb with a stem that ends in I, for example imoroida, which means to vacuum. Step number 1, in order to form the verb stem, we have to form the third person plural present tense of imoroida, he imoroivat. Then step number 2, we want to remove again vat, so imoroivat changes to imoroi. This is our verb stem. Now it's time for the conditional mode. Here we have 3 steps to follow. Step number 1, remove the I. So imoroi changes to imoro. Step number 2, add easy. So imoro plus easy is imoroisi. And then step number 3, again we add the personal ending we want. For example, let's take the second person singular. So that means imoroisi plus t becomes imoroisit. This is the conditional mood for the second person singular of imoroida. Imoroisit in English means you would vacuum. Nice. Now let's move on to rule number 3. Verb stems ending in 2 same vowels. For example, avatar. Avatar means to open. First we want to find the verb stem. So again here from the third person plural present tense of avatar, which is he avavat. Then in step number 2 we have to remove vat. So that means avavat changes to ava. Now we want to form the conditional mood. Here we have 3 steps to follow. Step number 1, remove the last vowel, so ava with a double A changes to ava with 1 A at the end. Then step number 2, add easy. So ava plus easy is avaisi. And then again step number 3, we add the personal ending we want. For example, for the first person singular, it would be avaisi plus n, and we get avaisin, which means I would open. Right? Now, rule number 4, verb stems ending in diphthongs. For example, ie, uo, or yo. For example, vieda. Again, we want to find the verb stem. Step number 1, we form the third person plural present tense of vieda, which is he vievet. And then in the second step, again, we remove the vat ending. That means vievet changes to via. Now we want to form the conditional mood. Also here we have to follow 3 steps. First, we have to remove the diphthong's first vowel, so via changes to va. The I letter got removed. Step number 2, again, we add easy, so va plus easy is vaisi. And then step number 3, we add the personal ending. Here we take the first person singular, so vaisi plus n is vaisin. So this is the first person singular conditional mood of vieda. Let's take another example. Joda, which means to drink. In order to form the verb stem, we have to form the third person plural present tense of joda, which is he juovat. And then again, step number 2, we remove the vat ending, so juovat changes to juo. Now it's time for the conditional. So step number 1, we have to remove the diphthong's first vowel, so jo changes to jo. The u letter got removed. Step number 2, we add easy, so jo plus easy is joisi. And then step number 3, we add again the personal ending we want. Let's take for example the second person singular. Joisi plus t is joisit. In English it means you would drink, and this is the second person singular conditional mood of joda. One more example. Let's take sjöda, which means to eat. In order to form the verb stem, we have to form the third person plural present tense of sjöda, which is he sjövat. In step number 2 then, we have to remove the vat ending, so sjövat changes to sjö, which is our verb stem. Now again it's time for the conditional mood. Step number 1, we have to remove the diphthong's first vowel, so sjö changes to zö. So the letter Y got removed here. Step number 2, again we have to add easy, so sö plus easy is soisi. And step number 3, again, we add the personal ending we need. For example, second person plural, soisi plus te is soisitte, meaning you would eat, plural. Alright, we move on to chapter 3, in which we are going to learn how to conjugate the conditional for all persons in both positive and negative forms. Our example verb is lukea, which means to read. So, minä lukisin means I would read. Sinä lukisit, you would read. Hän lukisi, he or she would read. Me lukisimme means we would read. Te lukisitte, you would read, plural, and he lukisivat means they would read. Now the negative forms. Minä en lukisi, I would not read. Sinä et lukisi, you would not read. Hän ei lukisi means he or she wouldn't read. Me emme lukisi, we wouldn't read. Te ette lukisi, you wouldn't read, plural. And he eivät lukisi means they wouldn't read. Alright, next chapter number 4 is the exception. An important exception in the conditional is the verb käydä. Let's see why. Minä kävisin means I would visit. Sinä kävisit, you would visit. Hän kävisi, he or she would visit. Me kävisimme, we would visit. Te kävisitte means you would visit, plural. And he kävisivät means they would visit. Now the negative forms. Minä en kävisi means I wouldn't visit. Sinä et kävisi, you wouldn't visit. Hän ei kävisi, he or she wouldn't visit. Me emme kävisi, we wouldn't visit. Te ette kävisi, you wouldn't visit, plural. And he eivät kävisi means they wouldn't visit. Let's move on to chapter 5, how and when to use the conditional in sentences. One situation where we use the conditional is in jos sentences, or in English, if sentences. For example, olisin tosi iloinen, jos tulisit, means I would be very happy if you came. Let's go step by step. Olisin is the first person singular conditional mood of olla, which means to be. Tosi means really. Iloinen, happy. Jos, if, and tulisit is the second person singular conditional mood of tulla, which means to come. So why do we use the conditional here? Well, because the happiness, which is expressed here by olisin tosi iloinen, I would be happy, depends on a condition, jos tulisit. So let's repeat again. Olisin tosi iloinen, jos tulisit. I would be very happy if you came. Alright, then we also use the conditional for polite requests. For example, saisinko ottaa tämän lehden? Means, may I take this newspaper? Let's go step by step. Saisinko is a combination of the first person singular conditional mood of saada, which means to be allowed to, plus the question marker ko. So saisinko means, would I be allowed to? Ottaa means to take, here it's standing in its infinitive form, and tämän lehden is the genitive case of tämä lehti. Tämä means this, and lehti means newspaper. Here we use the genitive case because we are referring to a specific newspaper. So let's repeat again. Saisinko ottaa tämän lehden? May I take this newspaper, or would I be allowed to take this newspaper? So again, here we use the conditional mood in order to form a polite request. Next one, we can also use the conditional in order to form polite questions. For example, saisinko kysyä yhtä asiaa? Means, could I ask one thing, or may I ask one thing? Let's go step by step. So saisinko is a combination of the first person singular conditional mood of saada, which here means to be allowed to, plus the question marker ko. Kysyä means to ask, and yhtä asiaa is the partitive case of yksi asia, which means one thing. So again, also here we use the conditional mood in order to form a polite question. Let's repeat again. Saisin kokysia yhtä asiaa. Next one, we can also use the conditional in order to form suggestions. For example, minun ystäväni ehdotti, että menisimme baariin, means my friend suggested that we go to a bar. So let's go step by step. Minun ystäväni means my friend. Minun means my. Ystäväni is a combination of ystävä, which means friend, and ni, which is the possessive suffix for the first person singular. Ehdotti is the third person singular past tense of ehdottaa, which means to suggest. Että means that, it's a conjunction, and menisimme is the first person plural conditional mood of mennä, which means to go. Baarin here is the ilative case of baari, meaning bar. So here we use the conditional mood in order to form a suggestion. By the way, menisimme literally means we would go to a bar, but in English you'd rather say my friend suggested that we go to a bar. Alright, so let's repeat again. Minun ystäväni ehdotti, että menisimme baariin. My friend suggested that we go to a bar. Next one, we can also use the conditional form in order to form polite commands. For example, odottaisitko minua means would you wait for me? While this kinda sounds like a request, it's rather a polite command. Let's go step by step. Odottaisitko is a combination of the second person singular conditional mood of odottaa, which means to wait, plus the question marker ko. So odottaisitko means would you wait? And minua here is the partitive case of minä. Why do we use the partitive case here? Because of the verb odottaa. Remember direction? Odottaa plus partitive case. So let's repeat again. Odottaisitko minua? Would you wait for me? Next one, we also use the conditional in order to form desires. For example, kunpa minulla vain olisi aikaa means if only I had time. Let's go step by step. Kunpa means if only. Minulla olisi means I would have. Remember again, minulla on means I have. Minulla olisi means I would have. Vain means just, and aikaa here means time, partitive case of aikaa. Here we use the conditional in order to form a desire. Let's repeat again. Kunpa minulla vain olisi aikaa. If only I had time. Next one, we can also use the conditional in order to form wishes. For example, Tony toivoo, että hän saisi gitaran lahjaksi. Means Tony hopes that he would get a guitar as a present. Let's go step by step. Toivoo is the third person singular present tense of toivoa, which means to hope. Että means that. Hän, he. Saisi is the third person singular conditional form of saada, which means to get. Gitaran here is the genitive case of gitara, which means guitar, and lahjaksi means as a present. It's the translative case of lahja. So also here we use the conditional in order to express Tony's wish. Let's repeat again. Tony toivoo, että hän saisi gitaran lahjaksi. Tony hopes that he would get a guitar as a present. Nice, now we arrived at our last chapter for today, the exercises. Here is our first one. Write down the conditional forms, positive and negative, for all persons of the verb puhua. For this task we have 5 seconds. That's right, the answer is minä puhuisin, sinä puhuisit, hän puhuisi, me puhuisimme, te puhuisitte, and he puhuisivat. Now the negative forms. Minä en puhuisi, sinä et puhuisi, hän ei puhuisi, me emme puhuisi, te ette puhuisi, and he eivät puhuisi. Next one. Form the first person singular conditional mood of the verb tietää. That's right, the answer is minä tietäisin. Next one, from the second person singular conditional mood of the verb kysyä. That's right, the answer is sinä kysyisit. You would ask. Next one, form the third person singular conditional mood of the verb opiskella. Very good, the answer is hän opiskelisi. Next one, from the first person plural conditional mood of the verb tavata. Excellent, the answer is me tapaisimme. We would meet. Next one, from the second person plural of the verb tuoda. That's right, the answer is te toisitte. Next one, from the third person plural conditional mood of the verb herättää. Excellent, the answer is he heräisivät. Very good. The next task is to fill in the gaps. We want to say, I would be very happy if you came. Olisin tosi iloinen, jos... What do we need to fill in? That's right, the answer is tulisit. Olisin tosi iloinen, jos tulisit. I would be very happy if you came. Next one, you wanna ask, may I take this newspaper? Otta tämän lehden. What do we need here? Very good, the answer is saisinko otta tämän lehden. One more, we wanna say, Tony hopes that he would get a guitar as a present. Tony toivoo, että hän kitaran lahjaksi. What do we need here? Excellent, the answer is saisi. Tony toivoo, että hän saisi kitaran lahjaksi. Tony hopes that he would get a guitar as a present. Nice, that's it for today. I hope you liked this video. If you want to learn more Finnish, please don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Thank you so much for watching. Have a nice day and see you next time.